Starting off with the most obvious one, especially for cystic fibrosis, high intensity interval training or HIIT training. Now for me personally, I love this type of training because it pushes me to my absolute limits. It strengthens my lung capacity and it does clear my lungs as well. I don't often get clogged up lungs, but when I do, I know that high intensity training just helps me. And it's pretty basic, it's pretty common sense. With a lung condition, especially if your lungs are starting to clog up with thick, sticky mucus, obviously, if I'm breathing harder and heavier and deeper, naturally, I'm going to start moving that mucus around in my lungs. So high intensity training is an absolute must on that list of exercises for people with CF. General cardio equipment, rowing, bike, ski erg in the corner over there, you know, any running, swimming, cycling, anything like that that you can do at a high intensity for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, especially on those intervals where you can work really, really hard for like 40 to 50 seconds and then have that 10 to 20 second rest period in between, is really, really good for just getting those lungs working really, really hard. Now, let's talk about my favorite type of exercise, strength training, over on the weights. Now, I've been strength training pretty much my whole life. I started weight training when I was quite young, just lifting light weights, just lifting, body weight squats, press-ups, pull-ups, things like that, but also just lifting lightweight for 10 to 15 reps and 3 to 4 sets. I have pretty much lived in the gym for most of my adult life, and I absolutely love what strength training does. So in terms of cystic fibrosis, it's kept my bone density high. So on a DEXA scan, where we go for scans every 4 years, 5 years, I'm +4, so my bones are super strong. And one of the things that I credit to that is just my strength training in the gym. Not just for cystic fibrosis, strength training is amazing for everyone at all ages. Obviously, when you're a child, you've got to be really careful, and I wouldn't advise lots of children going out and lifting lots of weights. There's no need. Naturally, body weight training is really good for progression and development. Now, when it comes to strength training for me at the moment, I'm typically training 4 or 5 times a week in strength training, so 4 or 5 weight sessions a week. And that's typically between, maybe 1 or 2 strength training, so low reps, so 6 to 8 reps. And then the rest of my sessions are sort of 10 to 15 reps, 4 to 5 working sets on each exercise. And I do like to split my body parts up, so I will train sort of shoulders and back on one day, I'll train chest on another day, and legs and arms on another day. I'm just splitting that week up. So I'm giving certain body parts a rest. And finally, let's talk about zone 2, steady state cardio. Now, a lot of people that have done ultra running or long distance events like the triathlons and Ironmans will understand that zone 2 training is absolutely imperative if you want to increase your endurance. This, what I'm doing now, is zone 2 training. Arguably a little bit less, where your heart rate is roughly 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. The whole point of steady state cardio is it does what it says on the tin. You're not training at intervals, you're not training at high intensities, you're just looking to maintain a steady aerobic base, essentially where your body is burning fat for fuel. Now, these sessions for me typically last anything from 45 minutes to an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes longer, especially on those long runs. The reason for this is that it's basically lowering my heart rate. It's helping me build that foundational base of aerobic capacity because I can go for a lot longer. But also, one thing that people don't realize is that it actually helps my high intensity training as well. Some of those training sessions will be really boring, like now, sitting on the bike for an hour and a half at this pace. If you haven't got access to somewhere that does VO2 max testing to find out your VO2 max, and from there you will find your zone 2 training thresholds, you can work this out on a numbers basis with a simple calculation of 180 minus your age. So for example, if you are 40 years of age, 180 minus your age is 140. 140 would be your upper limit. So if you take, say, 20 to 25 off there, off 140, you'll be looking at roughly, what's that, 115 to 140. That would be your zone 2 training zone. And you want to keep there for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, hour and a half. The longer the better, but the good thing is that very low risk to injury, less stress on the joints, and typically it's an easy pace for a sustained amount of time. Now, the one thing to remember, if you haven't got a heart rate monitor on your wrist or on a chest strap, the easiest way to know when you're working too hard is when you start taking deep breaths in between sentences, because quite frankly, a zone 2 training pace should be conversational. So just like I'm doing now, I'm keeping up the conversation, I'm not having to take breaks between sentences, and my heart rate is nice and steady. Now, question time. You have sent in some questions specifically around this topic. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to drop into the comments and I'll answer them in another video as well. So first up is Mark Williams. I'd be curious to know how your routine has evolved over the years. For Isaac, team sports are motivating, so we follow that route, but something solo ultimately is going to be important. I played a lot of team sports in school. I loved the kind of the camaraderie, the teamwork, and all of the banter that you get through being in team sports in school as well. I did love that, but then I also loved going into solo sports like cross-country running, where it was all on me. That accountability, that responsibility of the performance was just on my shoulders, and I really, really enjoyed that. So my routine over the years has definitely changed. I think obviously owning your own gym really, really helps with accessibility. You know, I can come in here, I can train whenever I want, I can train with who I want, I can jump into the classes. So, you know, that's probably not a great way of, it's probably not a really good gauge to that question of how my routine has changed. I think my routine drastically changed when I became a professional athlete and I was essentially getting paid to train. Mentally, sometimes I felt like I fell out of love with training because it was now my job. So that was really hard to motivate myself to keep going on those days where I thought this is now just a job. So definitely that did change my mindset around training in that moment in time. Now I just do the stuff that I love. I just do all of the exercises that I love, and I also train with people that I really enjoy training with, that push me to that next level. I can push them, they can push me. So yeah, my routine's definitely changed over the years. My routine's definitely changed when there's been more injury as well, so I've had to take out some of the strength training, especially the heavy sessions, when my body's just screaming at me to stop and relax. And again, with the resistance training, with the cardio, depending on what challenge I've been training for, you know, my routine has drastically changed. Like, I've done more zone 2 cardio training since I started running, especially the ultra distances. I've done way more zone 2 training than I used to, when it was just mainly strength and high intensity. So it really depends on what you're training for and the purpose for your training. So hopefully this video has given you a good idea of, you know, how to adapt your training around these 3 core areas that I think are just absolutely vital. Next up is Jem Douglas. I'm curious about getting the balance right for my 15-year-old BCF who currently does football 4 times a week and gym training. He's already complaining of knee issues. How do we get the balance right? Then she goes on to say, he's a bit rubbish at stretching out, even though I send him lots of videos. Can you do stretch out mobility routine video to inspire our CFers and keep them injury free? You're talking to someone who's absolutely riddled with injury. However, this is a topic that is on the agenda for my videos. I'm going to get my physio in and he's going to take me through some stretches and mobility stuff to help you guys as well, because I think with the amount of training that I've done over the years, naturally when you push things to the extreme, your body is going to start to break down. Your joints are going to hurt. My knees are like packets of crisps when I squat, whether that's morning, afternoon or evening, it really doesn't matter. So obviously if he's complaining of knee injuries though, I'd have that checked out by a physio specifically, and the stretching of the quads, the hamstrings, the glutes are obviously really key if he's got knee issues, and the calves obviously. But I think for me it's just making sure that you're staying on top of that routine and making sure that he is obviously doing some stretches and mobility work, especially if he's working that hard. Hannah H. My 13-year-old son is a competitive boxer with CF. Because he does a lot of cardio training, he's struggling to bulk out and build muscle. Any tips? So personally, when I was that age, was stick thin. There was almost no muscle on me. I was running cross country for Wales at the time, and I really struggled to put weight on, purely because I wasn't doing a lot of strength training as well. So I was eating quite a fair amount, but because of the amount of running that I was doing, I just really struggled to put weight on. Again, it comes back to that balance of what you want the long-term goals to be, but it's really difficult because you don't want to take a 13-year-old and then make it not fun. So for me personally, I would just say consume more calories than he's obviously burning, and then mix in, maybe start to do a little bit of strength training with a 13-year-old, but keep it super light. Maybe just plyometric work, body weight, press-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, squats, whatever it might be. That will help his boxing as well, obviously, but I think for me it's just making sure that those calories are up and he's not burning more than he's eating. And last but not least, Joe Flower. Transitions through life and balance, managing their activities as they grow. What things are more appropriate at what ages, stages, or are there no limits? Are there no limits? You're talking to someone that definitely thinks there are no limits. Like, despite whether you have cystic fibrosis or not, anything is possible, and that starts with your mindset. That starts with your habits, your routines, how you set yourself up for success. If you're going in to anything, whether it be a fitness event, whether it be a new job, whether it be a new school and making friends in the class, if you're going into it with a mindset of, oh, but I have cystic fibrosis, or how does cystic fibrosis affect that as the outcome, or how is cystic fibrosis affecting my work rate, you're always starting on the back foot. And I just don't believe that that should be a thing. But I can promise you one thing, if I didn't have the right mindset, I wouldn't be as fit as I am today. And I think that's the mindset that we want to instill in these children and these teens and even these adults of today. Never start off on the back foot in your mind. Now, I hope that's been helpful. I hope I've answered your questions well enough. If you've got any more questions, please drop them into the comments. And if you've liked this video, please like, please subscribe, and stay tuned for more.